Now, Risenga Maluleke, who's the Statistician General, joins me now via Skype. Thanks so much for your time on SABC News this afternoon. Let's just start with how COVID-19 restrictions impacted on data collection.
Firstly, let me greet the SABC viewers and say COVID-19 did affect our work in data collection. My apologies. Now, let us look specifically in the way we used to collect data. We used to go out and deal with people and respondents face to face. So as it is now, we have to use what we call computer-assisted personal interviews, where our field workers sit at home and call the respondents on the phone. So what happens there is that you talk only to those who have telephones, but that would create a bias. So we have to go in the issue of looking at the numbers, number crunching. We use the first quarter of 2020, which was the last time we collected data in person, as a control quarter for purposes of eliminating the bias towards those who have cell phones or telephone numbers only.
So we saw an increase of 0.1 percentage points in unemployment for Q1. Tell us more.
What we are seeing is that there were not much movements in both the employed, the unemployed, as well as your discouraged work seekers, perhaps a bit more on the discouraged work seekers. When we look at the employed, they increased by 28,000 people from 15 million, and they're still sitting at 15 million. The unemployed decreased by the unemployed are sitting at 7.2 million, and they've decreased only by 8,000 people. So when you look at that, we are saying that the movement from the previous quarter of quarter 4 of 2020 has been very least, and we have seen an increase by just 0.01 of a percentage point from 32.5% in the last quarter of 2020 to 32.6% as of the first quarter of 2021.
So the number of not economically active persons increasing by just over 150,000 people. Can you explain to us that 17.2 million persons who are not economically active and break down those figures for us?
What we look at in the not economically active, we look at your discouraged work seeker, as well as your other categories, as in students, those who say they are too young or too old to work, or those who say that they are homemakers, or those who say they are ill because of illness. Now, let us look at the discouraged work seeker, for example. It increased by about 201,000 people, taking us to about 3.1 million in the quarter that we are talking about. That is the first quarter of 2021. Now, when you look at the other not economically active, they decreased by 38,000 and bringing us to about 14 million. So when you take the 14 million plus about the 3 million of your discouraged work seekers, they come together to about 17 million. These are people who, one, are either discouraged to look for employment, and amongst those 17 million, I'm saying there are 3.1 million who are discouraged to look for employment. We also have another 1 million that say that if they were able to get employment, they would have taken it even if they didn't look for employment. So when you take that 3.1 million plus the 1 million, you come to about 4.1 million. You add them to the 7.2 million of your people who are unemployed or who are actively looking for employment but are unemployed. You come to about 11.4 million people. And that is what we call the expanded definition of unemployment, which returns an unemployment rate of 42.3%.
The Eastern Cape recording the highest official and expanded unemployment rates. What other trends are we seeing in the different provinces across South Africa?
Firstly is that the Eastern Cape has always been leading in the highest number of the unemployed on the official definition as well as on the expanded definition. But when we go specifically to the other provinces, generally rural provinces do show higher unemployment rates, but largely there's even a larger jump when you come to the expanded unemployment rate. Look at the Northern Cape, for example. It has the lowest unemployment rate on the narrow definition for the country. And it used to be Limpopo in the past. Now, when you look at provinces like Limpopo, Northern Cape, Mpumalanga, Free State, as well as the Eastern Cape, when you go to the discouraged work seeker, they jump and they now expand a lot more. Now, when you look at that in provinces like Limpopo, Eastern Cape, perhaps lesser in Eastern Cape, in Eastern Cape, you have more people actively looking for employment, whereas in the other rural provinces, you have more people who are your discouraged work seeker.
Mm-hmm. I just want to move away from the quarterly labour force figures that came out earlier on and go to the fact that every 4 years or so, Statistics South Africa announces what's in the consumer price index basket of goods and services. Now, with concerns about jobs, low wages and inflation, can you give us some insight into what informs that, your research into the next basket and the importance of that basket?
Well, firstly, to get the basket of goods and services, we need to conduct what we call the income and expenditure survey, as well as the living conditions survey, so that we can know what people are earning and what they are spending on. Now, at the stage, we haven't conducted the income and expenditure survey for quite some time, owing to our financial challenges, as that's a say. That is why we are not able to issue your number of people who are poor in the country since 2015. So our basket of goods and services will remain the same for quite some time because we don't have the source data through which we can drive this issue. Having said that, we continue to collect consumer price index data. Producer price index data is easier because we collect it from the factory gates. But in terms of the consumer price index data, we collect it from the shops and from services that people get. And as long as the basket of goods and services is not updated or changed based on what people are spending on, over time, perhaps not now, there will be challenges in our inflation numbers. So this is a matter that we are addressing with government for purposes of being funded so that we can conduct the income and expenditure survey.
I know when we've spoken over the years or months, this issue of Statistics South Africa and the funding is coming up often. Can you just also tell us the implications? You've touched on one now. I also know that in terms of best practice, you've normally said as stats say it has to happen every 5 years. That's not going to happen because of those challenges. What are the real-life effects of a Statistics South Africa that is not properly financed and therefore cannot collect data and update as it's meant to?
Firstly is that any agency or any organization that doesn't have funding to do its work will not be able to function. And indeed, any statistical agency like ours in the world will have challenges. At the stage, because of the challenges of funding, we have already cut down on what we call add-ons, integrative reports that we used to look at, say, prices, GDP and unemployment and right reports. We have cut down on those. So we just release numbers because we want to protect the basic and core statistics of any statistical agency. That's the one part we bring. But in the long run, for example, if we don't conduct the income and expenditure survey, which talks about our poverty numbers, if you ask us now what is the number of people that are poor, we'll tell you 40% of the population is poor. And we are using the lower bound explanation. But that is as far back as 2015. And we are 6 years down the line in 2021. But we don't have latest data to use, to provide because we don't have funding. So in the long run, while in the short term it doesn't look like a bigger impact, but in the long run it will have an impact. Look at the GDP, for example. We will not be able to talk of what is happening on the household expenditure side to be able to explain what is happening to the economy. So in the long term, there will be an impact.
Risenga Maluleke, the Statistician General, thank you so much for your time on SABC News this afternoon.